Welcome everyone to the African Doctoral Academy Masterclass. My name is Natalie Kavalik. I'm the Program Manager at the African Doctoral Academy, and I'm joined by our guest speaker, Professor Sebastian Gertner. Professor Gertner is the Professor of Healthcare Management Strategy and Innovation at Bern University of Applied Sciences, Switzerland, where he also serves as head of the Institute of Strategic Entrepreneurship and Innovation. His research focuses on value orientation, innovation, and technology management across various industries. Professor Gertner is a member of the Research Councils of the Swiss National Science Foundation, Switzerland's largest research funding organization, and serves as an editorial board member for the Journal of Product Innovation Management. Throughout his career, he has been recognized with several teaching and academic awards and has published his research in numerous internationally recognized journals. Professor Gertner will be speaking on the topic of From Idea to Impact. We'll be opening the floor to questions after the presentation, so please feel free to ask your questions in the chat or the Q&A section. And my colleagues Luther and Francois will be assisting with questions after the presentation. Just a reminder to everybody that is joining the session today, it is being recorded and it will be made available on our YouTube channel. The links can be found on our website. So welcome everybody, and I will now hand over the platform to our presenter, Professor Gertner. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you also very much for this kind introduction. As you have noticed in the introduction, I have several roles, and I'll try to come back to those roles throughout the presentation. And if you are confused a little bit about the title, it's called From Idea to Impact, and previously it was From Idea to Value. So I'm going to jump from the concept of impact to the concept of value a little bit, but don't be disturbed by that in any way. I'm glad we had some registrations for this masterclass. Shows me that you are interested in tackling grand challenges and creating value and creating impact with your research or with your business idea and your company. All right, let's get started. Maybe the first question that we should answer is, what are grand challenges? I'm sure that you have heard the term, and if I ask 5 people, there will be 6 different explanations for what this actually means. So it's important for us to, talk about the same thing, and therefore I will quickly introduce my perspective on grand challenges. The first, to my knowledge at least, the first person to introduce the term grand challenges in a research context was David Hilbert. He was a German mathematician, and he defined 23 problems of mathematical nature that were termed grand challenges. And some of them are still out there. Some of them have been solved in the past, and some of them are still relevant. And the big question is, why did he do that? This was like 100 years ago, and still we have this term grand challenge. We have expanded it to different contexts. But the question that you might have right now is, why do we actually do that? Why do we define precise problems? And the reason is that we have a lot of research and economic activity going on that is, how do I put this, that is all over the place. Everybody is doing what they like and what they deem relevant and what they can do from a perspective of resources, of capabilities, for example. But if you really want to change something, it is necessary to create a certain momentum. And this momentum can only be reached if, a lot of people, a lot of individuals, a lot of companies work on the same problem. So the idea is to focus the attention of researchers and companies on something that is really important to us as society, to us as researchers, to us as industry. Usually, it is collaborative responses to solving those global problems, and there is one definition for grand challenge that I quite like, and I would like to share that with you. It's from the Academy of Management Journal, which is one of the top tier management journals for in academic research. And it says grand challenges are specific critical barriers that, if removed, would help solve an important societal problem with a high likelihood of global impact through widespread implementation. And there are some issues in there that I would like to highlight, some fragments that are really important. First of all, we talk about societal problems, important societal problems. So obviously, our society, our planet is suffering from several problems. And focusing attentions on those that are important to a great mass is the first thing that defines a grand challenge. So it has global impact. When you solve this challenge and remove this barrier that Jerry George is talking about, if you remove this barrier, then the impact will not only be felt in one country or in even a continent, it will have a global scale. And this is what is also important for a really grand challenge. And the last thing that I would like to highlight, and I will come back to this in the presentation, is that it requires a widespread implementation of the results. So even if we have a lot of people working on those grand challenges, that doesn't, that's not sufficient. We need to figure out how to solve those challenges and then implement the results. And they need to be implemented even more on a global scale. Those grand challenges usually require, coordinated effort. This is why we come up with those grand challenges, and we normally need multiple and diverse stakeholders to solve them. And I would like to touch upon two perspectives in this presentation. The first one is the industry perspective, and the second one is the research perspective. If we think about impact and global challenges from a research perspective, we can see that we, as institutions, as research institutions, and as researchers, are more and more driven towards creating impact. Some of us might want to, there might be their genuine goal to create a big impact with their research, but some really like challenges, some like the methodology, and have other goals than contributing to solving one of those grand challenges. But we as institutions, be it from an accreditation perspective, ASCSB, for example, is an accreditation of business schools. And they require the schools to report on the impact that they have through research and teaching. And the funny thing about that is that they don't know how to measure this impact, and we don't know how to measure this impact, because impact in research usually is a long-term perspective, and it's not really traceable to the one article. So if I publish one article about entrepreneurship behavior, it is really hard to tell what the actual impact on society is, because what this would require is to see the change in behavior of companies and of individuals over the years, and trace that back to my article, and this would be the impact of this article. And this is really hard to measure, but what we try to do is we try to tell impact stories, and this is what we're also required to do. We are required to show how we want to create the impact, and maybe show instances of where we come close to showing the real impact of our research. So it is those accreditations that force us to look more towards impact, but it's also funding programs, for example. You might know the Horizon Europe network, which is a big funding institution, and they give out billions of dollars each year to researchers. And what they require already in the proposal stage is that you show what your research or what the impact of your research might be, how you are tackling a big problem for society. And most research institutions, most universities are, taking up this pressure, adapting to this pressure, and putting this impact perspective in their values. They say, okay, we are an institution that does want to create a positive impact, and they, of course, develop strategic measures on how they want to support that. So for research institutions, this becomes more and more important over time. The second perspective that I mentioned is the industry perspective. So if you are a company a couple of years, 10, 20 years ago, you were pretty much concerned with shareholder value. So how can you increase the value of your company for the shareholder? And this is all that counted. And what this has led to is, exploitation of resources, really critical behavior when it comes to human capital, and so on. So this did not align with the society perspective on things, on problems, on challenges, but also on behavior. But this has been changing over time. What then, as the next step, became more relevant for companies was the customer perspective. So you looked more closely on the customer, how you can help the customer overcome specific challenges, how you can make them benefit from innovation. And the last step that has been, or that is still going on, it has started a couple of years ago, is that we are more looking towards a societal perspective. And two things that I have that I have put on this slide that you might recognize is ESG, so environmental, social, and governance perspective on the company that is increasing in importance, every year. In Switzerland, most issues that we talk about, most consulting that we do for companies in the business school is in and around ESG. So companies are really struggling with aligning their values and their actions, especially their actions, to social, environmental, and governance behavior that actually contributes to making society a better place. So ESG is one, and the other one is the B Corporation. I don't know if you have heard about this. B Corps, this is also like a big certification organization that tries to help companies to meet the highest standards of social and environmental impact. And if you believe you are a company that does, create this kind of societal value, then you might want to look at a B Corporation and get certified. If you are getting certified, you have to fulfill certain standards. And a lot of companies are actually going in this direction. If it is with this accreditation company or with others, it doesn't matter. But B Corp is a big player in this area, and this shows that societal value and societal impact are becoming more and more important, also from an industry perspective. So companies, similar to research institutions, are expected to create a positive impact. And this is recognized by investors, by customers, and by regulators. So those three bodies, those three stakeholders actually require industry to take this broader perspective and show how they contribute to a better world. So what are those grand challenges? And there are different ways of coming up with focused attention on grand challenges. And this is one of them. Most of you or all of you have probably seen those Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals, and this is only one. There are other grand challenges that are, combined, listed, and that countries, organizations agree on as being grand challenges. Agenda 2063 is another one, but I think if you look at the entire planet, the Sustainable Development Goals is probably the most well known. And just to see what those grand challenges that I'm talking about are, we are talking about zero hunger, no poverty, decent work, and economic growth. So it's on this scale that you need to think about your actions as a company and your research as a researcher. And how you're going to do that, I will try to tackle in a couple of minutes. But coming back to you, you chose to listen to my talk here, and thank you again very much for being interested in that topic. The question that you should be answering yourself is, which grand challenge are you addressing? And especially for PhD students that I talk a lot to, but also experienced researchers, this question is not easy to answer, and they need to think about their contribution and the way they have been doing research over the past years. And sometimes they say, okay, I'm not addressing a grand challenge. And then my question is, why not? What is keeping you from, addressing a larger problem? That doesn't mean that, I'll go back to this one. None of us, I guess, none of us is going to solve any of those grand challenges. But we might be able to have a small contribution. If you're working in the agricultural field, for example, doing research there, you might work towards zero hunger. If you're working in the healthcare sector, it might be about good health and well-being that you are contributing to. But it is important to see this bigger picture and see where your contribution is in this bigger terms. All right, so this is something that you should ask yourself. Next, I would like to talk to you a little bit about how we can go about tackling those grand challenges. First, from a research perspective, and second, from an industry perspective. So with the picture you see there, or the small video in the background, this is absolutely not my field. So I'm in management and innovation research, but it well reflects what a lot of people understand as research. And I will try to be as broad as possible, but of course, speaking from my own experience as a researcher in innovation and management research. So for research, it is quite easy. All you need to do is you need to take a grand challenge. You need to pose an interesting, relevant research question. You need to have the right methodology. Then you disseminate the results, and then you have your impact. Sounds easy, but as I put in brackets there, it might be not so easy to actually achieve those steps in a way that you maximize the potential impact of your research. And we'll go through each one of those in a minute. First of all, and this is also based on an editorial by the Academy of Management Journal, which dealt with this question a few years ago. And they defined 5 dimensions that help you to maximize the impact or potential impact of your research. First of all, there needs to be significance. So trying to tackle a bigger problem, a grand challenge, pursuing a bold idea is really important to maximize your own impact. Because if you are only trying to work on a very small problem, what I see, for example, is that a lot of PhDs throughout the world are working with very specific companies, solving very, very specific problems for their companies, and only seeing the problem of this company. And this, for me, is a bit problematic because it is very likely that other companies might have similar problems to that. So what you can actually do is increase the impact by, zooming out, seeing what the underlying mechanisms are, and try to apply them to to more contexts than you actually try to with this one company. And therefore you can have a bigger impact. You can also increase the significance if you adopt less conventional approaches to managerial or societal problems. Most of the grand challenges are actually being addressed by a lot of researchers. And when you come up with an idea that is less conventional, a perspective maybe borrowed from another discipline that looks on a certain problem, on a challenge, on a phenomenon in a different way, then your impact might be even more significant. Second dimension is novelty. Of course, it is very important to add something new to the discussion, and a lot of the top journals actually look for this, not only, but too strongly look for this novelty. So how new is it? What is new? Are you looking at a new phenomenon or outcome? And as I just mentioned, it is very hard if you want to actually address a grand challenge. It is very hard to look at a new phenomenon because they have already been defined for years and decades, and people are looking at this phenomenon from very different angles. But you might be able to look at this phenomenon with a new outcome. So maybe if what is a good example here, if you are looking at the success of companies, it was long the success of companies was usually related to financial success, profit. But later on, new dimensions, new outcomes of success were added. For example, how happy are your employees? How happy is the entrepreneur that actually started this company? Because this is a relevant success measure that has been overlooked previously when we are only looking at profit, for example. So coming up with a new outcome might be this piece of novelty that helps you to create impact. And of course, and this is what most researchers, scholars do, is to add new predictors of a known outcome. So we are looking at financial aspects of firm success, and you come up with new predictors, things that influence the success of the company that hasn't been addressed in previous research. So that's the novelty part, and so far so easy. Next is something that is hard for most researchers actually, because what you need to do is you need to grab and hold on to the reader's attention. And as a researcher, you usually write not only papers, you also write grants, for example, so proposals for research grants. And similar to papers, you need to have a story. You need to tell a story of why your research is important. And the way you shape not only the question that you have, but also the story you tell in your research really defines if this is interesting for the reader or not. And if it's not interesting for the reader, the results can be very novel and they could potentially help a lot of people, but people don't really see that because they lose attention. So this capability, this curiosity dimension is also very important. And sometimes this is only about terms. Next, the scope of your research, and this delves a little bit into what I already mentioned, the degree of which the phenomenon is captured. So if you look at, for example, health and well-being, if you, or let's say zero hunger, if you're looking at zero hunger as a big grand challenge that you are addressing, and you are a researcher in the field of agriculture, and you are only looking at one specific watering system for plants, this is what you are studying, then your scope is very small. It can be even smaller if this watering system is only for a particular sort of plants in a particular area of the world. But when you start with your research, remember we are at the defining research question point here. When you start your research, you have the possibility to really expand on that. So throughout your research, and your research might be your paper, which is the smallest part of your research, then you might have the doctoral thesis where there might be different papers in there. And then you have, your research legacy, even post PhD, postdoc, assistant professor, full professor. You can contribute to this research question, this big research question that you have over time. And the bigger the scope of this is, the more different watering system in different contexts for different plants you look at, or even add a combination of, watering and fertilizers. I'm not from the field, so please excuse if you are, and I'm oversimplifying that. So if you are, growing the scope of your research, then obviously your impact can be much larger. And last but not least, also overseen by a lot of scholars, especially in the management field, and those aiming for top-tier journals, sometimes miss this very crucial part. Your results need to be actionable. You need to provide very clear insights for practitioners on how to deal with your research results. What do they need to change in their behavior in order to reach that outcome that you are talking about? And some journals are actually picking up on this point and expand on practitioner or implications for practitioners, and even want short summaries for practitioners where you only tell about those points and not focus on the methodology that you needed for coming up with those results. So actionable results, a large scope, a good curiosity, high level of novelty, and big significance. Those dimensions drive how big the impact is of your research, and this already with the research question. So usually what we do with when I have this talk with PhD students, I let them reflect their own research question regarding those 5 dimensions, and then I push them to come up with at least one refinement of their research question that addresses one dimension, so they create or that potentially the impact is bigger. For you, this could be homework, and I hope some of you will do that and will look into that and improve the potential impact. Next, now we have the research question. Now what we need is a good methodology. And this is also a slide that I show in a lot of research courses that I give. And the message behind this cartoon is that your research results might actually drive, or your research design might actually drive the research results. What you see here is Professor Sapinski, And he just found out that the octopus is much smarter than the cat. But if you look at the research design, which is, building or puzzles underwater, the research design really gives the octopus some sort of advantage over the cat. Coming back to taking this a little bit more serious, even though this research design aspect is very serious, and I could, talk about this for 2 or 3 hours. But the bigger picture is that you are looking at a phenomenon that is very complex. Grand challenges are, by definition, very complex and complicated to solve. So when you look for your methodology, you should make sure that you really are able to have a deep exploration of this phenomenon to truly understand it. Sometimes research papers, especially, but also a PhD thesis, is just scratching on the surface a little bit. But if you want to really create impact, create value for society, then you need to dig deep. And sometimes it's not the very interesting, if you use a secondary data set, it's not the correlations that you see there, which are easy to sell and you could easily write a paper, but digging down and trying to understand why do we see those correlations between X and Y? What are the mechanisms behind that? What are the boundary conditions? Under what conditions do I have this result? And under which conditions does this result go away, this correlation? This is very important to create impact. So you need to dig deep in terms of mechanisms, in terms of boundary conditions, in terms of the phenomenon that you understand. And usually what you need to do that is multiple data sources and multiple empirical methods. So I'm a big fan of mixed method approaches. Doesn't necessarily need to be in, one paper, but as I just mentioned, exploring the why behind quantitative empirical results that we see is very important. And therefore, a qualitative approach mixed with a quantitative approach can help you really to understand more of this complex phenomenon. Secondary data, primary data, which you collect through surveys, quantitative data, for example, interviews, but also data that is available from the companies themselves, and data that is publicly available in social media about the company, etc. So those are all valid data sources that ideally should be combined to get a holistic picture of the phenomenon. And last but not least, involve stakeholders in the research. So those that actually need to implement your results when you have published them or when you found them, those organizations, those institutions can be involved and should be involved in the research itself, because they probably already have insights into the phenomenon that you could use. And second, because you want them to implement your results, you can lower the resistance if you involve them early on. If you involve them as experts and then later on show, aha, look, this is where your expertise came in and we combined it with others. And this is the results now. And this means that you need to change whatever you're doing, then it is much easier as opposed to when you go to them right after you've finished your research and just tell them they need to change whatever they are doing. So involving them early on might prevent this not invented here syndrome that you most of the time get from stakeholders, especially in politics, but also in others. All right, so if you consider those three aspects combined with the insight that Professor Sapinski generated with his experiment, then you should be fine with your methodology. And there is no right or wrong about a certain methodology. I'm not saying quantitative is better than qualitative. I'm saying that more empirical methods combined can give you a better insight into complex phenomena. Now you have your research question, you have your methodology, you actually have your results. And now's the question, what do you do with the results? And first of all, because some of you might actually want to pursue an academic pathway, an academic career, then you probably need to publish in peer-reviewed journals. And you can create impact in those peer-reviewed journals within the scientific community. And this is important impact because others might take up your results. You will be cited, and they take your results to the next level. They might use your results and refine them. They build upon your theoretical foundation and so on. So it's important to do that. It's an important part on the game with all the problems there are with scientific peer-reviewed journals. If you are looking for the right journal to publish in, and those are just journals from the field of innovation and entrepreneurship. Those are the relevant journals that we try to publish in, those top tier journals. But in your field, these are probably different journals. And if you want to find them, you can use journal rankings. Don't rely just on journal rankings and say, okay, this is a good paper because it's published in a good journal, which is highly ranked. This is not what this means. But more good papers are published in higher ranked journals. I think this is something that we can agree upon. You can also look at the editorial board. Do you see any scholars from your field that are well known, people that you actually cite in your research, that your research builds upon? If that's the case, then this is probably the right journal for you. Also look at the process. Is the process transparent? Is it a rigorous peer review process that is underlying the quality of this journal? And this brings me to the last point, which is about avoiding predatory journals. Predatory journals, if you don't know, those are journals or publishers that have pay to publish a business model. You send them your paper and pay, I don't know, 2,000 US dollars, and 3 days later your paper is published. They don't so much care about the quality of the article. They don't coach you through this peer-reviewed process, and even the reviews that you do get, because they still want to be peer-reviewed journals. You do get reviews, but you get them like within 24 hours, and there's only 2 or 3 sentences in there. And this is obviously not pushing you to the next level and not ensuring quality. So there is a list, predatory journal lists, different ones on the internet, and most organizations actually rely on those. And there are big publishers, for example, Frontiers and MDPI are big publishers that are very much criticized, and their journals have been put on those predatory journal lists. And for example, at my institution, I can't publish in any of those journals. And this might, if you do, this might actually hurt your reputation. And if you are applying for a job at a university who cares about this, then this might be a problem. So just watch out for that, and put it in your own context. Again, I'm just talking about my own research experience, and for me, this is a very important point. Now you have published the results in very good journals, and what you need to do next is go the extra mile, because you have just created impact, ideally, in the scientific community, but you have not reached any practitioners yet. So this extra mile means translating your research results into the language of practitioners. And you can do so by, addressing practitioner journals. This is a magazine that is read by a lot of managers, and some of you might recognize Jurgen Klopp. He was coach manager of Liverpool soccer team, and this is actually about leadership. This is an article about leadership. So this, and when I say translate, then I really mean translate, because the language that is used by practitioners, by journalists, it's much different than the academic language you use in peer-reviewed journals. And we, for example, have courses in Switzerland that researchers can attend to help them make this translation and you develop this skill. Second of all, of course, you need to push your results through social media. All of you probably have social media accounts, multiple, and you can reach a lot of people by doing so. The most recognized one in for a professional community that we use in Switzerland and Germany is LinkedIn. So pushing your results through LinkedIn, but also other networks is really important. Even the Academy of Management Journal now came up with the idea of translating some of the articles into short videos that they then put on YouTube, for example, and on Instagram. News outlets, conventional, journals, news journals, or the radio and TV. Those are mass media that you shouldn't underestimate. And if you have a really catchy story and you contribute to society, then reporters will be interested in that stuff that you do, and they might put a piece on your research into one of those media types. So what we do usually is we try to build relationships with journalists, long-term relationships, and when they need something on a certain topic, they ask us if we have research on that, and when we have research on certain topics, we give it to them, and they use it in their coverage. Then, of course, industry talks and panels. So this is ultimately the people that you want to get your insights to, because it is their behavior that is helping you to create the impact. They have to usually change their behavior in order to reach that grand challenge, to contribute to solving that grand challenge. And last but not least, engage in teaching. I don't know how many students I have had in my classes, but it's definitely in the 10,000s. And I've talked to those over a semester, over 2 semesters, and I gave them insights about my research, and they have heard it, and they took exams on it, and hopefully they kept some lines that I said in their mind, and they use it. They use it when they go out in the field, and this is the next generation of managers, of leaders, of people working in companies, of people starting companies. So this is a really important crowd to understand your research, to know about your research, and that can spread this research to others as well. So this is the extra mile. And this is usually not funded by any research institution. It is usually not well recognized within your university. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But still, if you want to create impact, this is what you need to do. Not all of this, but some parts of that. And the last point is that if you come up with something very clever, you find a solution especially when you are an engineering student, or when you are in healthcare or anything else, and you come up with a great solution, start your own business. There is no more direct way to create impact than starting your own business. You can build a business case, find like-minded people, get feedback through funding sources. If you involve venture capitalists, for example, they will look at what you are doing. If you go to a bank, they will probably look at your ESG activities that you have or that you plan, and then you can immediately start something good. All right, and this leads me to the second part of my talk, which is the industry perspective. If you remember, I said that grand challenges require, coordinated effort through from multiple stakeholders. And the first one that we looked at is, research. And I guess most of you are researchers, so this is more or less, or this was about how to structure your research to create impact. But the second perspective is the industry perspective. And this, connects really well to your startup, because when you have a startup, you switch your perspective from research to industry. And maybe this is the difference to research. Every entrepreneurial action has an impact on society. And this is different because not every research that is done must have an impact on society. You can do research. If you don't publish that, if nobody reads it, then it doesn't have an impact. But as soon as you go out there and take actions as an entrepreneur, as a company, whether you sell a product to a customer, it makes their life better or worse. When you hire an employee, it has an effect on the employee, on their family, on the education of the children, of the quality of nutrition of the children, a lot of things. If you pay taxes, you have an impact of the maintenance of roads, of building and operating schools, because this is what taxes are usually used for. So you see, this is an immediate impact that you have, and actions that help to tackle grand challenges, of course, then create a societal value or social value. And coming back to this is very complex, as I just mentioned. Um, there are a lot of dimensions, a lot of levels where you do have impact and create value or destroy value, for that matter. I'll come to this in a minute. When you start a business, or when you have a business case and you talk about a new technology, you look at this impact usually very unidimensional. For example, you have a technology in, let's come back to the agriculture part. You have a new watering system that helps you to save water, or plants grow more efficiently. Then this is the outcome. This is the y-axis that you look at. This is the outcome. Outcome is plant growth or reduction in water use. And you have the status quo, and you have the technology. And if agricultural companies, farmers would implement your technology, they would save water or have more plants, larger plants, whatever you're looking for. And you could say that between the status quo, so the way they are doing it today, and your technology, this is what you create as impact. And this impact grows over time, because what you do have is, a diffusion of your technology. You might start with one customer who implements it, and at the end you have 10,000 customers. And of course, this one impact that you have on the plants or the water usage of this one customer, it multiplies by the number of customers that you have. So the impact gets bigger the more diffused your technology is. But what you forget sometimes is that the status quo actually develops too. So whatever watering solution they use right now, this might become more efficient over time as well. Or plants might get more resilient, grow better because of other aspects, such as fertilizers, for example. So the status quo usually is increasing as well in terms of outcome, and your technology has then a lower impact. All right, so this is, as I mentioned, very unidimensional. But social impact is very, very complex. And I've mentioned a couple of examples before. So those, especially if you are a bigger company and you implement a new technology, for example, that makes your production processes more efficient. This is very good for you as a company in terms of your outcome, and you might increase shareholder value. But this might also lead you to needing less people in the production line. You might have to let hundreds of people go, having an impact on not only them, but also their family on education in a certain region because they can't send their kids to school anymore or whatever. So it's very, very complex. And the only way to actually look at this in a systematic way is social impact analysis. And this is a structured approach. If you Google, if you look it up, then you find a lot of guidelines and examples of how to do that. And you can do this for every company, for every action that you do, for every new technology that you introduce. I usually do this with entrepreneurship students when they work on their ideas, and of course they start with the customer perspective, the company perspective. But at some point, they have an entire seminar where they have to do a social impact analysis, and then sometimes they come to the realization that, okay, actually, I thought this would be a really good idea, but it destroys the environment. It is not good for the employees. And I might actually change that idea. I might alter that idea. And sometimes it's only very small things that you need to change to make it better in terms of social impact. One example is also microcredits for rural women. You might have heard about there are different programs on that. And what you have is, as a company, you have an intended positive impact. So this is what I want to do. And in this case, the microcredits, what they did is they provided resources for business and empowered women to start their business, and that worked fine. Absolutely. This was the intended positive impact of this initiative of this company. There was also unintended positive impact. The higher quality, or because the women had more resources, they had a higher quality of life for their families. They could send their kids to school, which led to generations of increased wealth. And that was an unintended impact of this program. But there were also unintended negative impacts. Unintended negative impacts were, for example, more conflicts in families, because where those programs were rolled out, we usually had very hierarchical structures within the family, and the men were not happy that their women went out to work, and they might even use the money for gambling later on. So there were studies that showed that gambling increased in those regions where this program was put into place. So you usually have an intended impact, but also unintended impacts, and it's very important to look at those as well. Ideally, with a social impact analysis, this helps you to uncover more impacts on a more detailed level. There might still be unintended impacts, but yeah, at least this helps. All right, and last but not least, I would like to present you one of the research papers that some colleagues of mine did, and they published this in the International Journal of Management Reviews. It's a systematic literature review of entrepreneurship literature, looking at pathways to create social value and social change. So what do we know? How do companies create social value and drive social change? And they actually looked at 347 academic papers, analyzed them in depth, and identified 3 main pathways for social value creation. And I thought this fits quite well into this topic, and I'd share this with you. The first of those pathways is addressing the need of the customer, and this is probably the most obvious one. So you create new products and new services and address the need of the customer. But this is not where it stops. Those companies that actually have a high social value creation do more. They don't just throw the product on the market, but they create awareness, provide information to highlight the benefits, to show that this product really helps this family or this marginalized community or whatever you are looking at. Then it also fosters attitude change at an individual level. It helps people, for example, to be more sustainable, to use less resources. And last but not least, there is this access dimension. It lowers the prices to increase accessibility. Of course, most products and services, and this is also a big research area that we look into, most innovations actually target a very tiny bit of the population, those at the top of the economic pyramid. Those who have a lot of resources, most of innovation activities benefit them, and the products and services that come out benefit those individuals. But by lowering the prices, by coming up with affordable solutions, you can actually increase access and therefore increase social value creation. You can increase the impact, positive impact. Second, what you can do, this is, so first of all, we had the customer perspective. Now we have the producer perspective. Usually you are in a value chain, you have suppliers of raw material, of, whatever you use for your production, and you have wholesalers down this value chain right up to the end customer. And social value creation also happens in this value chain. So those companies that create a lot of social value, that provide financial capital, physical capital, human capital, and social capital to those producers in their own value chain, to help them become more efficient, more sustainable, to grow, create more jobs. And those financial capital, it could be monetary, but it could also be resources, physical infrastructure, letting producers use your own infrastructure. It could help them not only to be more efficient, but also learn about new technologies that you might have in your organizations already in place. And this goes into this human capital, where it's all about skills and knowledge and training and education. And social capital is about the networks. So if you share your relationships and your networks with those in your value chain, then this might actually help to create social value. This is the second pathway. And the third pathway is more community oriented, where we see that those companies that are really embedded in a certain community. And by community, I mean it could be a local community, for example, a town you're in, or a city, or it could also be a cultural community. And this embeddedness usually helps to also create human capital, again, develop skills through training and education. You might interact with schools, universities in your community to help build the next generation people that you employ, but also other organizations within your community. It helps the community to recognize opportunities and seize those opportunities. It also usually helps with social inclusion of marginalized parts of the community, for example. And ideally, this is the top level of companies that achieve a lot of social value. They manage to that this positive impact on their own community also spills over to other communities. And in those mechanisms that we see here, or those mechanisms are oftentimes related to, CSR activities of companies, corporate social responsibility initiatives, that is. All right, so those were the three pathways that this literature review identified. And what you can see is that companies are a vital part in creating social value, and by creating social value, contributing to solving grand challenges of our society. To wrap up, addressing grand challenges with your business or your research is possible, but it requires intent. You know, this just doesn't happen by accident. It might, but then only to a very small extent. But if you really want to have an impact, you should think about this impact very, very early on and implement it as early as a research question that comes up, as early as you have a business plan for a new company, start a new company, or develop a new technology. All right, that's it from my side. I think we are, in terms of time, I think we are okay. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm open for questions.
Thanks very much, Sebastian. I will now hand over the platform to Luther, who will be able to pose some questions to you. Again, everybody that is joining for this session, please feel free to ask your question in the chat or Q&A or raise your hand, and we will be able to unmute you to ask your question. I do see that there is one hand up, and Luther, I will be passing this on to you to conduct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Natalie. Before we go to the hand, we just had this question in the chat. What are some common barriers researchers face when attempting to scale their ideas into impactful solutions, and how can these be overcome?
So I think one of the biggest challenge that I see is that you are studying a phenomenon in a very particular context, and this context does have limitations to because it's different from other contexts. So what we are trying to do is already in the research, we are testing boundary conditions. We look at what context, or does the context actually drive the results or not? And if yes, how does it differ in different other contexts? You know, if you look at firm success, for example, very simple example, firm success it could be driven by, for example, financial resources. And you study this in the healthcare sector, and more particularly studied this with nurse practitioners, so practice nurses that have their own very small little companies. And so if you don't go the extra mile and test your results in other contexts, then you can only provide a solution for this very niche study context that you actually look at. So I think if you try to expand on the context and over time, and this might not be realistic in your PhD thesis, but later on test it in different other contexts and provide broader implications, or even sometimes it's enough to reflect those implications that you have for this niche group with other stakeholder groups of other contexts, and try to refine those to their specific context, then this could really help. And second barrier that I need to mention is, as a researcher, you don't have resources to do this. This is usually a hobby, and this is very sad. And it's the same around the world. You are paid to do the research, but this translation into solutions is usually done by you out of interest, out of a desire for impact, or it is supported by initiatives that actually aim towards this translation. You know, for example, in Switzerland, we have what they call a bridge program, and there you can take scientific results and you get some funding to see if these are actually useful for practitioners and for helping making this translation step. I hope that
Okay.
helps.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it does. It does. I'm sure it does. Thank you very much. I see we have three hands up. So we're going to start with Bisong. Bisong, I have unmuted you. Can you please ask your question?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Very quickly, my question is this. I just wish to find out, I'm a researcher. I want to know what is the most easy way to link up researchers with industries? What's the most easy way to link researchers with industries?
Yes, so thank you for that question. I think the easiest way is to do the research with the industry. You know, we have in Switzerland or Europe, we have programs where it is especially supported if you have industry collaborations in research projects. And this is maybe I can go back to this one slide that I had. This is this one here. Involve stakeholders in the research.
Yeah.
So industry, for example, it is a very important stakeholder, and getting them on board, getting them maybe even do parts of the research is a very easy way of linking the results or getting the results into implementation in that specific company.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We're going to move on to the next hand. We've got Maklan Kankomba. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. Maklan? Okay, maybe whilst Maklan is trying to unmute themselves, maybe we should move on to Ephraim. Ephraim, you can go ahead. We can't hear you. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes,
Hi.
we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. No, I just wanted to ask, with regards to, let's say, scaling up your research findings, right, to start a business out of it.
Yeah.
So how would you go about this? Because in my understanding, if you conduct research in any institution, let's say in an academic setting, right, the university normally owns the patent to the work that you are doing. So do you have the rights to begin with to even, let's say, pursue any type of business based on what you found in your research? So I suppose maybe that's where for me a bit
Yeah.
struggling, you know, like how do you move between the research and actually starting a business without infringing on some kind of patent, you know, or ownership?
Yeah, no, I see that point. Thank you very much. This usually this in my experience, the most fruitful way is a collaboration with the research institution. And you said that most of the time the research institution owns the IP. I'm not sure if that's the case. It's very different from university to university. For example, at my university, the IP is freely given to the researchers. They don't need to pay anything. In other universities, it is that you do. They have a stake in the company, so they get, I don't know, 5% of the company in order for you to move freely with this IP. So I think the only way to not infringe on any rights is to work. First of all, you need to figure out what the legal situation is, and then to work with the company. Usually they have a technology transfer office, and they are interested in using this IP. You know, if you don't use it as a researcher, what are they going to do with it? This is for them the easiest way to get this on the market and to get some revenue of it. And maybe they need to be a partner involved in this business for you, but that really depends on the legal situation in your university.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Maklan, would you like to ask your question now, or are you already captured? Yes, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. I want to know what are the limitations to value creation in a marginalized community like Malawi, and what mechanism can we put in place to overcome those limitations?
That's a very tough question. Thank you for that. So those limitations are manifold. I think there are resource capability and cultural components to those limitations, and each of those needs different measures. Social value creation especially in marginalized communities, but also in other communities, often happens in an informal way, which means that it is not a lot of people don't know about it, and research doesn't know about it. So we actually have no idea how this happens, and we are actually trying to study this with a new research program.
Okay.
But apart from that, it is usually it's resources that you need. It is the cultural acceptability of what those actions and those initiatives do, that need to fit with this community, and it is about education and upskilling of workforce to actually help to create this value. I know it's a very broad answer, but we would need to look at your specific case more particularly to find more specific answers. But as I mentioned, from a research perspective, we don't know a lot about that. I couldn't recognize 2 or 3 papers looking at that, and we're trying to go deeper into that and come up with a research project in that area. So if you are interested, feel free to connect and we can talk about this.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Maklan.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for that response. We've got a question in the chat from George, and George is asking, at what stage would you recommend protecting your idea, especially if there is potential to commercialize it?
Also, tough question. There is a lot of discussion going on of whether IP protection actually helps in creating social value or destroys the social value. So I see the point from the individual that you would want to protect your idea or your intellectual property as soon as possible and build your business on that, and that's very legitimate. Through your actions and through the implementation of your research results, you will create social value. But from a pure social value perspective, making your results publicly available for more companies to create and implement those results could even create more social value. So I'm afraid from a social value perspective, I would say don't protect it, just make it freely available. But as you probably have to earn something from that as well, this might not work for you, and there needs to be a compromise. What I would do is to actually protect the idea and the IP, build your company, and then try to give away parts of the IP at a later stage, or maybe this is the right. This might be the right pathway for social value creation for you there, empowering the producer, along your value chain, help others to develop as well with your IP.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. And just this one is just coming from my side. I would just like to understand how we can redefine success in tackling grand challenges. Should it be based on immediate impact, long-term sustainability, or even the capacity to influence future research agendas and policy changes? Just your thoughts on that.
You already gave the answer there. No, I think it needs to be, the first thing is we need to think about success in a different way than we did in the past. That's the first thing. Grand challenges are not solved this week and this month. So we do need a long-term perspective on that. And it is related to, I just talked about the social value creation today, but there's also a social change perspective related to that. And it is necessary to include this social change perspective in the outcomes. We need to change in order to in a long term, in a long run, to tackle those grand challenges. So that the problem with that is that it's can be said, between researchers, we can discuss that, and we can even discuss that with policy. But what you want to see when you have a program or an innovation or whatever, and want to talk about the success, you need a certain point of measure. And this cannot be 20 years in the future. This needs to be closer, because we need to sometimes adapt a policy, or we need to adapt a technology. So it is a lot about intended change and intended impact that we want to look at, and not the realized impact and the realized change. Does that help, or was that more confusing you?
No, it's very helpful. Thank you very much for that. I see we don't have any more questions in the Q&A and chat, but I have one more question, and hopefully that will be our closing question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How do you think, how can we balance the need for rigorous long-term research with the urgency of addressing immediate and pressing global challenges? You spoke a lot about grand challenges, especially,
Right.
in areas such as climate change, inequality, or even health crisis.
Right. So I can tell you what doesn't work, and what doesn't work is the business model of the most journals that we see. So the way we publish research results in peer-reviewed journals right now is problematic, because I have several research papers that took between 1.5 and 2.5 years from submission to publication. And fortunately, my research is not in a very urgent field like medical science or biology or climate adaptation, climate change, whatever. But we need to find ways to ensure that the research is done rigorously, but not taking 2 years to actually evaluate it. And there are some journals that actually adapt to this change, that have rapid, open review processes. Those help a little bit, but I think we need to step in earlier. And this is what research funding institutions do. Natalie mentioned that I'm also a part of the Swiss National Science Foundation. I'm a research counselor there, and the Swiss National Science Foundation gives out 1 billion of research funding, or 1.5 billion of research funding each year. And what we look at is that we very early on in the research proposal already look at the rigor of the research, the intended rigor. So you have to describe very rigorous what you want to do, how you generate or how you get your data, what data you use, how you do your calculations, stuff like that. So we can already judge it there. And then when you have the results, you are supposed to publish them immediately, open access. Publishing open access is key, and there is hardly any institution in Switzerland that can still publish in a normal closed journal. All needs to be publicly available. open access. So this is one thing that we can think of. Of course, there's also an education perspective on that. So if we raise the awareness of rigorous of the need for rigorous research with PhD students already, and continue with this sort of education about rigorous research throughout the research career, then we can ensure that what is done is right and we come up with the right results. And we don't need to judge it on those, dreadful publication timelines anymore.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. That will be all the questions and comments from my side, Natalie.
Thank you very much, Luther. And again, thanks very much to our presenter, Professor Gertner. I think the session was incredibly valuable from a research perspective, as well as for researchers wanting to start their own innovation or business, as well as those also already in the industry. So again, a huge thank you from the African Doctoral Academy side for taking the time to present today. And also to all of our delegates who joined, thank you very much for attending, and also just extending my thanks to Luther as well as Francois for the technical support and also helping with the questions. We will have our next masterclass coming up, so please keep an eye out on our website as well as our newsletters, where we will be also just telling you what the new next topic will be on, and we look forward to having you next time. So thank you again to everybody, and hope everyone has a very good afternoon. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you very much. Have a great
Thanks.
day.
You too. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.